Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today I want to talk about this, the Terramaster U4-423, a 1U 4-bay Intel Celeron powered rack mount. I've not reviewed any of the Terramaster rack mount devices. Indeed, the first time I saw one, I think was 2019 at Computex when they had a stand over there in Taiwan. And in that time that has passed, their range has excelled in terms of its design. One of the reputations that Terramaster had, at least as far as their first couple of generation of devices was, they looked dated as hell. And I think that is one of the areas where they've really attacked. And when it comes to rack mounts, there is definitely a growing demand for home-based rack mount devices, be it for your own little home lab, something in a garage or the attic, or just users that want something slightly more streamlined in its design than that of desktop devices. They've got an existing rack cabinet that they've got different systems all running in from different OSs and more, and the idea of this, a 1U half-depth rack mount, Terramaster's first I should add, is definitely going to be appealing to a lot of users out there. But before we go any further, a few disclaimers straight off the bat. Number one, I am not going to be going through the Terramaster software or benchmarking this device in today's video. Number one, because I'm already reviewing a 9-bay from Terramaster from another video that may already have gone live that's pretty much using up all of the storage media I have to spare right now. And the reason I'm not reviewing the software is at the moment Terramaster's 5.1.3 software is going to be having a massive review here on the channel. So you can already check out a link below to my full review of Terramaster TOS software anyway. But on top of that, I will be going through a number of the highlights of that software later in the video. But I'm not going to include it because it'll be too repetitious for you, and it allows me to keep this video hopefully under the 20-25 minute mark at most. This is a hardware review, but a lot of the software and the benchmark can come later with things like Plex and a lot of the software capabilities in a follow-up video. Another thing I will highlight in today's video is that this 1U rack mount, because it's the first rack mount from Terramaster I've ever reviewed, some of my observations of it are going to be quite unique compared with that of the desktops, where I'm not overly keen on the 4 and 5 bay desktops, but I've quite liked that merging for rack mount and desktop chassis design that the 6, the 9 and the 12 bay have adopted there. So I'm going to be very critical of their approach to rack mount on this, no doubt. But let's get this outside of the bizarrely thin box. That is not what I expected a rack mount box to arrive in, by the way. This growing demand I've seen for integrated graphics and kind of the home and prosumer CPU device, CPU equipped rack mounts has been growing in the last couple of years, and really it's only been QNAP that have taken advantage of that, extending their 5.3 and 6.4 series of Celeron powered devices towards rack mount, and now Terramaster have rolled out their own solution here in that rack mount form. I know Synology have never released an integrated graphics rack mount in their history, and why they haven't, I don't know, because the time is very ripe for it. There is our retail box, and it is fundamentally, and I would say literally, the beigest thing I've ever seen. It's dull, dull, dull. Not that it matters, it's a rack mount, but still, it kind of looks like I've just bought a new monitor, to be honest. Let's have a little look what we're getting for our money. I should mention for our money corresponds to £599, $699, and 690 or 89 to 99 euros. So the 4-bay desktop, the F4-423, which has similar hardware to this with a few tiny exceptions, that knocks around for about a 450 mark there. So you are paying 150 nicker, give or take, where you are 150 to 250, because it's a rack mount, which is kind of the rack mount tax. But alongside that, there's a couple of things I think for this as a rack mount that are absent on this that I am going to comment on later on that I think Terramaster should have included. But now, you can get that out of there. There is that giant box out of the way. So let's talk a little bit about the protection. Pretty well protected, I've got to say, all the way around. We've got our box of accessories too. Have a little look and see what we get for our bunts. We have a Cat 6 cable there. This is a 2.5 GBE equipped box. We've got the old Terramaster screwdriver. You guys know I love those. I've always got one to hand somewhere. We have an external power brick. Now, I am going to touch on that later on, but for now, yeah, an external power brick for this rack mount solution. And it's also a 2-pin power brick at that. More on that later. We've got the handles there for the front of the chassis. We've got screws for 2.5 inch and 3.5 inch media across each of the bays. And we have our first time setup instructions here included, as well as information on the 2-year warranty. That's one of my earliest criticisms, I would say. This device only arriving with 2 years of warranty. As far as I'm concerned, Rackmount should have 3 minimum. Another thing I will say about this, and I'm wondering if they're going to mention it here, is to do with the memory on this device. Do bear in mind that the CPU inside this device that we'll talk about later on is designed for up to 16 gig of memory, but Terramaster say that this system will support up to 32 gig there, so that is outside of what the CPU manufacturer states is its maximum, but Terramaster are very, very clear, as long as you use their memory modules to do it, it doesn't matter if you go up to 32, they will honour that warranty and still provide support there in a way that most brands would not. That is still a matter for contention and debate for some users out there, but at least they're prepared to say they'll support you at 32 rather than turn their back if something goes wrong. Again, more on that that PSU later. That PSU is a 90 watt PSU, I should add as well, for this 4-bay. So again, comparable to the 4-bay desktop. So if you remove the foam, again, lovely level of protection there all the way around. It's a very light 1U rack mount. I know it's 1U, but still, the depth of this rack isn't quite half depth. It's not a 30 centimetre, it's a 36 centimetre depth rack mount there, but still not too shabby indeed. Let's get that out of there and take a little look at our NAS. So there is our 1U rack mount all the way along there. Now, for those of you that have been following rack mount, particularly 1U rack mounts in the last year and a half, the main things that this is going to be compared against in terms of QNAP is going to be their Rackmount 64Us. On the other hand, if you're looking at Synology, you've got things like the RS422, that dual-core AMD Ryzen one. You've even got the 822 as well. So not the 822, what was I thinking of there? The 422, and another 1U rack mount there that I'm sure I've now forgotten the name of. So 1U rack mounts are still desirable, largely because not only are they very easy to integrate into an existing rack cabinet, so you're not using up too much space, but then within that small amount of space, you are adding another layer of your backup strategy there. But of course, with rack mounts, I mentioned it earlier, the rack mount tax, because the way these systems have to be built is just an ever so slight difference to what we're used to. So for example, you end up with a system where cooling has to be maintained horizontally. So you end up with more active fans, as you can see there, than you would find on a traditional desktop device. The same goes for the ventilation on that front panel. With the ventilation there all the way along, you can clearly see that the vents there have been designed all the way around, all the way up to the top panel as well. There's no LCD as I get the thumbnail done, but you've still got the LEDs to the individual trays. Normally, I would give a brand a little bit of crap for not including an LCD on some solutions, but I won't. It's a rack mount, you don't see that as much anymore. It's a shame there's no front-mounted USB. I always feel like front-mounted USBs make a little bit more sense on rack mounts. I know obviously there's the factor of them dangling or whatever, but getting to the back and the ports on a rack mount, I wish there was more rack mounts that had a USB on the front. Unfortunately, this is still in that camp of not including it there. The overall chassis design feels quality. It doesn't feel cheap. It feels pretty sturdy. It's a good quality rack mount there. And again, you've got the option of removing those handles. The trays are metal. We'll go for those spring-loaded trays, not click and load, so you are going to need to screw those drives in. Going into full metal integration on the inside, and again, combined SATA power there at the back, so no loose wires. This is, as you would expect, a 24/7 NAS, and they've tried to keep things as streamlined and efficient as possible. It's a fairly standard 1U design. I'll say I'm not going to say it's outstanding, but I'm not going to say it's bad either. I'm going to say it's just pretty much what I would have expected from a 1U rack mount. Now, when we get to the ports and connections, it's mostly things I like. So we've got our ventilating fans, as I mentioned, and I moved the mic so you can actually hear me. So you've got the 3 fans there, with the RPM being adjustable there across all 3 of them. Because this is an external PSU system, it means that all 3 of those fans are exactly that. They are active cooling for the system, not a PSU fan. On the rear, we've also got a USB 3.2 Gen 2, a couple of ports there, so a couple of 10 gigabit Ethernet, 10 gig per second USB ports there, and that supports network adapters, that supports external storage, that supports office appliances, UPSs, that sort of thing, and you can assign them to virtual machines using the virtual tool or some of that container application too. We also have a couple of 2.5 GBE ports there as well. So on the one hand, really chuffed that they're there, whether you're going to use multi-channel or you're going to be using link aggregation port trunking, depending on whether you're going to use a managed switch or not. Having those in there is great. So again, you've got that potential 550 bandwidth there to play with, which against those 4 drives is pretty darn good. It's a shame there isn't 10 GBE upgradability on this device. That would have been lovely. Sadly, that is not the case here, presumably because of that Intel inside being pushed to its very bandwidth limitations there. More on that later on. And we have an HDMI output there, which allows us to go into a debug mode for this device in the background for troubleshooting. But I think until Terramaster roll out their own parallel running GUI for the HDMI output, I think most users are probably going to use that for things like true NAS installations on this device, or even Unraid, Proxmox, that sort of thing that we've already shown guides here on the channel for previously. So, although those port connections are pretty good, I think in a desktop form, in a rack mount form, that lack of network upgradability beyond a USB upgrade may annoy some users. But the thing I think will annoy users quite a lot is the fact this is arriving with an external PSU. Now, those that have followed this channel for a while will know I have feelings on external PSUs. It is that I like them. I do like external PSUs. I think they make more sense. They are easier to replace. You can have a spare one sitting on a shelf. They are, you know, the PSU is arguably, beyond the storage media in some cases, the most fallible item on your system. And having an external PSU is just a quicker thing to replace. It removes heat from the internal system, frees up airflow and more. And I still believe all of that. However, on a rack mount, it is a completely different conversation, okay? In a rack mount, space is at a premium. A rack mount is in a case. A rack mount is going to be surrounded by other devices. A rack mount device is probably going to be in a rack cabinet, and the last thing I want is this dangly external PSU hanging like this. I do not want that, and I'm kind of surprised that that's there. And it's, although most of my arguments for this device, any negative points, are largely going to be specific user based, so therefore they are debatable, my criticism of that PSU, I think, is standard. I think everyone would agree that this system having an external PSU is not great, given when you think about how it will be deployed there. So we're going to remove the lid and have a little look on the inside if we've got any screws that I've not seen. Would have helped if I'd removed the side screws there, so we can get that top panel off. Remove that there, and then inside we find quite a modest little internal board there. As you can see with this 1U rack mount chassis here, perhaps this has been a pre-existing rack mount chassis where normally you would find a space being occupied by the PSU internally. Obviously that is absent here, and what we see is that internal PSU, let's bring that closer to camera, we see that internal PSU running into a power adapter board there that's dividing the extra power going each of the individual surfaces. That's not unusual, it's stuff we've seen before, but still nonetheless on a rack mount, I would have liked to have seen even a pre-rigged PSU inside there. Doesn't even have to be like a standard ITX, ATX slot-in PSU. I'm just kind of surprised they've gone for this methodology rather than installing an internal PSU. Whether that's a cost-cutting thing, a power efficiency thing, I'm not sure, but I'm not overly keen on that as a design choice there for that PSU. We've got the CPU inside there. Now that CPU is an Intel Celeron. It is the N5095, a quad-core 2.0 GHz CPU that can burst up to 2.9 GHz. Part of the same family as the N5095A and the N5105 that we've seen being utilised by the majority of NAS brands. That CPU also has integrated graphics at 350 MHz that can be burst up to 750 MHz. So what are we talking? We're talking integrated graphics. We're talking 4K encode decode. We're talking Plex Media Server. We're talking high-end multimedia support on this device. Indeed, in TOS 5.1.3, they've enhanced the support of 4K decode in the latest revision of TOS as well. That CPU, I would say, is mostly okay. I would say there are users out there that CPU means that there's probably more you could have done with the hardware architecture on this device, such as there only being one M2 NVMe slot inside there rather than two, and that is a Gen 2 slot, I will add. There's also the memory module inside there, the memory module there being DDR4. It's a 4 gig module. It's Terramaster's own memory, but it is upgradable to, they say, 32 gigs. So again, that comes down to you, the end user, if you want to exceed the manufactured CPU, the Intel's own recommendations there, but you would still be covered by the 2-year warranty if you want to expand beyond that point. Overall, I'd say it's a clean, well-ventilated setup inside there. The hardware architecture we're already largely aware of after testing it quite a few times in the U4-423 series there. The M2 NVMe slot there, I believe, is 3x1, which is going to be something of a bottleneck there, but I may be incorrect. I'll be corrected by the specs on screen earlier on. And it does lead into a multi-lane adapter there going into that board, which is what's feeding into the 4 SATAs. Again, with the 4 SATAs, you can go standard RAID, you can go for their flexible RAID, whatever floats your boat. It's not a terrible layout, it's just, I'm still not overly keen on what they've done there with the power supply unit in there, because that, to me, looks real complicated to repair and replace compared to a standard PSU that would go inside. But while we put that lid back on, let's talk a little bit about that TOS software, because as I mentioned in the introduction, I'm not going to go out of my way too much on this software, because we're already going to do a fat review of 513, but on top of that, with this system, we've already covered it in such great detail previously that I just recommend checking out those videos. The same goes for the benchmark that we'll be working on very, very soon when we do some of the software testing on this with 4 drives. Ultimately, TOS maybe could do a little bit more evolution. It's nowhere near as established as Synology's DSM platform or QNAP's QTS platform there. It runs on an ext4 or BTRFS file system choice at setup. There also is that flexible RAID system in T-RAID, comparable to that of, say, Drobo's Beyond RAID, or if you are utilising Synology's hybrid RAID system, which means that unlike a traditional RAID where you have to maintain the standard capacity of the drives that you're utilising across the whole RAID group, Terramaster's T-RAID allows you to introduce larger drives either on day one or later on as you expand your storage, and it will integrate that additional storage whilst maintaining one of the largest drives worth of redundancy. The software TOS is better than it has been. Again, just because it's not as polished, arguably, as QTS and DSM, still doesn't make it bad. It's a lot better than it was, and TOS 5.1 is a lot nippier than it was. There's a lot more applications in there. There's that security isolation mode as well that we've talked about previously. The one-click disable all remote access third-party apps and network PHP applications, all at the touch of a button that requires a restart. Then you've got an AI photo recognition tool in their TerraPhotos application there. There was, I should say, a surveillance application in their beta software when TOS 5 was rolling out. It seems like that's gone back to the drawing board for further development, and there is centralized backup applications, snapshot support internally there, container application support there. Then you've got the Terramaster third-party app center that allows you to install things very quickly via container-esque level installations for things like remote access applications, your Nextcloud and third-party cloud integrators and SaaS platforms that you want to talk to this device via as a kind of a cloud gateway, or acting as a synchronized backup with those as a bare metal, and with this only working as a brainless target. Then you've got things like Tailscale, where you can take advantage of TOS and connect to this device point to point very, very securely. Why am I talking about security a lot? Well, we all know because they were one of the brands that was affected by ransomware hits. They were targeted by the Deadbolt Group along with Asustor and QNAP, and they had to take their lumps along with everyone else, and they had to change a lot of things in their software platform to get past that. Alongside improvements in security, there was improvements in a lot of the way your data is handled, the subject of encryption across volumes, things like immutable backups with them changing access rights to a lot of your storage areas over a given period of time. It's not as advanced as what you've seen on Synology's DSM 7.2 that's slowly rolling out, but I will still state that TOS is pretty darn good. Just if you're going to make direct comparisons like I have with DSM and QTS, it is going to be found just a little bit more basic. A lot of the time you're buying devices from Terramaster, the hardware takes up a substantial amount of the budget you are paying, and it is reflected on that software. It does a handful of things very, very well. It's just not quite as feature rich and AAA plus app as the likes of QNAP and Synology. For example, they don't have their own competitor to active backup or drive from Synology. They have access to some third-party ones and some apps that do some of the job but not all of it. Same goes, they don't have an in-house virtualization tool, but they do have access to third-party ones for Docker containers and VM images. They do have some of the hallmark multimedia applications, but then they heavily lean on things like Plex Media Server to take care of the real fully featured stuff there. Same goes for client applications. They don't have many mobile and desktop clients compared with the likes of Synology and QNAP, and what they have is a lot smaller but integral in its design, only touching on the high demand things, which can then often lead them to being less of a sexy, exciting brand overall. Overall, if you're looking for a target storage, or you want to go for a simple, very streamlined, integrated graphics powered rack mount that you can adapt for things like TrueNAS, this is going to be a great choice rather than trying to build your own rack mount. Yes, you're still talking 500-600 NICA, but at the same time, the time and effort you're putting for a pre-made solution, it might be better spent in just saving yourself some time and just going for it anyway. I won't say it's perfect. I do not like that PSU. I think my feelings have been abundantly clear about that. Most of the other things about it I'm quite keen on. I think it arrives in a nice presentation. It's well put together. It feels sturdy. And the hardware components do seem very clean, well ventilated internally. And overall, although TOS isn't going to float everyone's boat, there is enough adaptability there and development in that software to justify the price tag, I think, for users that even those that are going to commit to the TOS software rather than going third party are still going to come away moderately happy. Just bear in mind it is nowhere near as evolved or as fluid as the likes of DOS or QTS at this DSM or QTS at this time. Thank you so much. This has been my review of the Terramaster U4-423. Stay tuned for the software overview very, very soon, as well as, of course, some further testing for things like Plex Media Server, not just on this device, but when we see the improvements in TOS 5.1.3. Thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this but need help with the right data storage solution, the links below will take you over to the free advice section at NAS Compares, the big blue button on the right, and the free community support forum at Ask NAS Compares, and of course there is the Discord too. If this video has helped you and you want to help us, continue to make more content, and you're going to go to Amazon anyway, if those three things are true, please use the links in the description to take you out to Amazon. Anything you buy after clicking that link, and I mean anything, results in a kickback coming to here at NAS Compares, where it's just me and Eddie doing what we do, a video a day, an article every day, and the free advice section. Again, only do it if this has helped you. It won't cost you anything, but it allows you to passively support content creators like us. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.